Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to Say It to Your Soul, the podcast. This is the place where I am daring to share my unfiltered experiences and lessons in personal growth, well-being, and behavior change in the hopes that together you and I can fulfill our potential. This podcast is all about connecting with your inner self and learning from others, getting curious about what is possible in this life, and taking courageous action. I'll look forward to chatting to you every Monday with a new episode. For now, I hope you enjoy this one. Welcome, Kaitlyn, to the Say It to Your Soul podcast. It's a pleasure to be on this Zoom call with you today, talking all things about your journey from living in New Zealand to moving to Australia and the courage that it takes to do something like that. And also in the friendship that we developed in meeting in the Gold Coast, I saw you go through so many transitions, and I think they are really relatable for a lot of people in their 20s and 30s and just all ages as well. And I think one of the big things that people would really relate to, and part of your story that I'm really excited to hear more about, is how you got your sparkle back lately. And that's something you shared with me, which I was really happy to hear. So first of all, would love to hear a little bit about you, whatever you feel called to share, and any, I suppose, pivotal things that have happened for you in your life that explain a bit about the person you are now. And then tell me more about this sparkle and how did you get that back?
Thank you so much for having me. I've been so excited to have this chat with you because you're just like such an amazing person to have conversation with. And that was something I always really loved and was very thankful for with my time in the Gold Coast, is like being able to connect with you, being able to see you have a goal and a dream and work towards it. And even sometimes when they didn't come to fruition, still have the courage as well to continue to show up. And it was really beautiful to witness and be around. So I'm very excited to have this conversation.
Thank you.
I always find the question, like, tell me a little bit about yourself, like really overwhelming because
Hmm.
it's like, do I tell you the highlights of my CV? Do I tell you about my childhood trauma? Do I like, where do I lead from? Do we have like the day? But I guess I had a very unconventional upbringing, growing up heavily around drug use and drug making and drug dealing. And
Wow.
then, yeah, I speak about it like it's nothing, but it's because I've spent so much time coming to terms with it that it's kind of like not laughable, but it's so far in the past. But that led me on a journey of personal development and into the self-help world, I'd say, and wanting to like be the best version of me that I could and do the things that scared me because, we're gonna die someday, so may as well dive in head first.
Mhm.
And also on that note, I've experienced a lot of like death and grief in my life. So as well, I think that ties in very heavily with wanting to try everything, wanting to do everything, wanting to just like dive in. But yeah, if we fast forward all the way to now where I have this wonderful sparkle that I didn't even know was a reality for me. I feel like it'd probably be a story of maybe a couple of parts. And the first part would be that I genuinely have always felt like a big part of my purpose here is to like be in my joy and to be able to hold space for others in my joy. And so, what that had looked like for me in the past was accessing this joy, which was outside of myself, but felt like it was part of me, and then being what I needed to be, but feeling quite depleted and drained afterwards, but not feeling like I was depleting or draining myself, but it took a lot of energy to find that resource.
Can you give an example of like something that happened like that?
Just like I'm a lot of the world that I see is like I read energy a lot and it's very visual for me. And I know how when people are in my space, energetically things will change. And I love that that that's a part of what I'm here to do on this earth that's in the unseen. But it felt like I was pulling from this well of reserves to be able to show up in that space. And like saying it out loud sounds really interesting for myself now because like I've learned healing modalities where it's like don't give too much of yourself, like you know when you're overgiving of yourself. And I think even just like the type of person you are, sometimes like you're just there to serve and give so much. You have to be mindful that you're looking after your own energy. And I always thought that I was. I just thought it was really hard to access this creative life force that helped me to do what I wanted to do. And all of that just to say that now I feel like this innate life force of like being able to facilitate those spaces just lives inside of me. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to access it anywhere else. I never realized until reflection and hindsight that I was accessing it anywhere else. But now it's like it is just a part of me.
Your joy is?
Yeah, and having that, like because I have this innate radiant sparkle inside of me that it's just like this light has turned on
Mm.
and there's no way that it could ever turn off. Like I literally don't feel like I'm accessing anything outside of myself. And I didn't realize I was before that, but now I just feel like yeah, that like I explain it to people all the time, like this light from like the base of my spine all the way up has just like turned on, and it's all of the vitality, all of the joy, all of the energy that I had been accessing before, but it's within me. And there's like, I can't even imagine how it would turn off.
Powerful.
Really life changing because my last year in the Gold Coast, I kind of get embarrassed talking about this because my last year was like it was a really low spot for me. And in my life I've had low spots with like suicide and grief and wondering why I had to experience the things that I'd experienced. But last year, in 2023, it just was like I had these three separate situations happen that were quite emotionally abusive, not in terms of like romantic relationships, but in living and work situations. And just like my self-worth and my belief in myself and any shred of like light that I used to have access to just felt like it disappeared,
Hmm.
like non-existent. And because I had been through other low times, like when I was around 18, like I wanted to end my life. So that was a really low moment, not wanting to exist here. This was a low moment, like there was no time that I ever considered not staying on this earth. But it just felt like I would live here from this really low place. And I knew how to show up in spaces. So I was like a functioning sadie. Uh,
Functioning saddie, did you say?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Like, I've started to try and think of people being like icebergs, where there's a fraction of what you see above the surface, and there is
Mm,
so much more below the surface. Like, that's something that we were talking a little bit about conversations and podcasting, and you mentioned as well, enjoying having those conversations with other people, myself and other people, when you were living here. And I feel like it's in those conversations that you see the full iceberg and you see the full person and you go, wow, I
mm,
did not know so much about you. And it can take literal years, a lifetime, to actually know the full depths of someone. For a lot of people, you might never know. And I
mhm,
feel like coming from a place of, okay, yeah, I've got a bunch of icebergs around me, it's kind of like a nice way to go, well, I'm not going to assume that I know everything about why someone's showing up a certain way. And yeah, even though you might be feeling so low as you described how you were feeling in your last year on the Gold Coast, people may have had no idea about that. So I think it's really powerful to share those experiences because it just is a reminder to people that, hey, remember the fact that we don't know what people are really going on or having going on inside their heads. So,
mhm. I definitely like, and that's one reason why I will always share my experience. Like my early 20s, I'd always just share about my experience because I felt like that's how we connect, in knowing that we're not alone in what we're feeling because we witness other people. And I feel like it's so much more available to us now and maybe in like
Mm,
the last 5 years, because people will have conversations and they will talk about how they're feeling. And there's a lot, like, it's still a problem, and there's more work that needs to be done, especially like in the rate of suicide in New Zealand and Australia and things like that, like a whole nother ballgame and topic. But I feel like it is starting to have space to become more normalized to talk about things and share experiences. And yeah, that's why I'm always super happy to talk about it. And even just to like explain, like last year I was, yeah, super low, but I had resigned to that would just be my new normal.
mm,
And like I feel like I need to like reframe it with like, I've been in the personal development world since I was like 14. Like I have done the work, I've gone to therapy, I've tried, like I've done the things. So it wasn't like I just got to a low place and I was like, there's no hope, like nothing, but like nothing could pull me out of it.
mm,
It was not frightening, but I was like, wow, I have done all the things and I still feel like a piece of shit. And I still just am scraping the bottom of the barrel. And there's a lot of things definitely tied into that. But I recently listened to a podcast that was recommended to me. It was Jay Shetty and I can't remember her name.
love Jay
And it,
Shetty.
yeah, or he King, very good looking as well. Not that that matters, but his eyes, man. Anyway, I digress. So the woman he was interviewing had written this book, Worthy, and they were talking about that there's a difference between self-confidence and self-worth. And it was the first time that I'd ever heard that. And they talked about self-confidence. It's like their ability to like show up, hit all the goals, do well in business or whatever the things are. Like you're like very self-confident, but self-worth is actually different. So a lot of people are self-confident, but then they don't feel the accomplishment when they hit things. And it's not because the goals are wrong or they've been doing them for the wrong reasons, but it's because they don't have the self-worth and they're very different levels. And I found
Wow.
that, yeah, I found it really, I guess, refreshing because I would say I'm a very self-confident person. Like that has never wavered. I still will show up. I'll still do the things. Like I've got no qualms in doing that. And the self-worth was non-existent. And to be able to actually have someone articulate them as separate, I was like, oh, because I couldn't understand how I could still be traveling the world, going to some of my favorite festivals and like enjoying it. Like they were so good, but I just still felt like this little husk of a shell is how I imagine it. Like just such a shell of myself and even who I am again today. Like just that refinding my spark and my sparkle and having people stop me on the street and say, hey, it's so nice to see you sparkling again. Like it's
Mm,
so nice to see you glowing. It's been, yeah, I don't know. That's like the solidifying. I felt that way, and people are like very, very much noticing it.
mm. Yeah. When you get that feedback from other people, and that's when you know, like, you may have already known it for yourself. And when
Hmm.
other people are noticing it, it's like, okay, cool. I already knew this for myself, and now you know this too. That's pretty
Yeah.
great to get that feedback. And it just,
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, solidifies, good word to describe how that would feel. So, okay, you learnt about this concept of self confidence versus self worth, which I'm definitely going to read that book because I'm really intrigued by that. And it actually
Yeah.
does, it makes sense to think about, yeah, like people can be showing up and doing things and be quite confident,
Mm.
but like the self talk in their head could still be pretty terrible. It could still be quite negative or talking down about themselves, even if you are showing up. Like
Mm.
I've yeah, not really thought about it that way before. So that's really interesting. And is that something that helped you to then start to progress into your sparkle again? Like, what were the things that, looking back in hindsight,
Yeah.
were the things that pulled you out of that low? Because you said that you'd done personal development for so long and you had so many, I suppose, different modalities and different ways of looking after yourself.
Mm.
and yet none of them were working this time. So what was it that was able to shift things for you this time?
I actually only listened to that podcast last week. So that was just like another moment of like that permission slip to, or validation to see within myself, like, oh, those things are different. And so that was just like a really beautiful extra, specifically to get my sparkle back. And like you said, I had all the modalities, all of the tools, all of the resources. I even had all of the support, beautiful friends on the Gold Coast, friends back home, like my mum. Everyone was there to support me because I'm not beyond asking for help. I've learned that lesson. And honestly, the thing that I feel like has made the biggest difference was actually taking and starting to take MetaPower. That supplement has cellular repair in it, and when I think about my body feels different. And I do a lot of body somatic work. It feels like something inside of me, like, I might just be making the visual analogy of something like repairing, but it is like something is turned back on. And like I'm very much into the data. So, last year I'm tracking what I'm doing. I'm meditating in the morning. I'm eating a really good diet. I'm having social time. I'm exercising. Like I'm doing the things. I'm still feeling like an absolute piece of shit. I started taking MetaPower. I had an actual spreadsheet that we created to track the things because I was like, I'm introducing something new. How is this affecting me? And yeah, I'm a whore for the data. So I I was using that. It's been an absolute game changer in how I feel. I moved home to New Zealand again, and I thought that like there's that saying because I was like, I need to go home. That'll be helpful. But there's that saying, everywhere you go, there you are.
Mm.
Doesn't matter if you're in the Gold Coast, if you move home to New Zealand, or if you go to New York, like you're still there. So I did move home to the Coromandel, and I was really lucky because one of my best friends was like, "You can just like come live with me and my family." So I did. And at the beginning, I actually found it even harder because I was really isolated and didn't have a car. And we live in like a tiny community with like a hill to get straight out of it. So literally, there's a walking loop that I do that's 2 Ks in a loop past my house kind of twice. And that's like how big our community is. It's tiny. And I moved home and I was like, I feel like there's parts of that definitely probably trigger that response of being home in the nervous system. But also like I'm not a stranger to travel, so there's been a lot of jumping around and stuff, and I kind of love that. So moving home definitely could have played a factor in that.
When you
And
had left New Zealand,
mhm.
do you feel like, because you said the quote, everywhere you go, there you are. When you left New Zealand, were you chasing something, do you think?
When I left New Zealand the most recent time to move to the Gold Coast, I was just so sick of New Zealand. I was trying to escape and people like ostracizing me for having different opinions and views and stuff. And so Australia to me felt like somewhere I could go that had more opportunities.
Hmm.
I love the beach and from the beach, and the weather was like amazing. I didn't feel like I was running at that stage from like anything to do with myself, just
Hmm.
like the environment of my country. Like, and that in itself is coming from such a privileged place, right? Like, I come from New Zealand, where maybe I don't agree with the government's choices, but it's like my safety is assured. Like,
Yeah.
I'm fully aware of that. But yeah, I love travel. I love the idea of the Gold Coast being at the beach and there just being more opportunity. But I really do think when I first moved over, I struggled to make friends. And I do think that was like a catalyst with like the self-worth stuff, this living situations that I had, the work situations that I had. It was just like this spiral down really deep to a place I couldn't get out of.
Have
Oh.
you heard the story about the ruby or diamond or something like that? So It's actually in Jay Shetty's book, Love Rules.
Yeah.
It's really good, and I feel like it'll resonate with you. So, look, I won't say it word for word because I probably don't remember it word for word, but essentially it goes that there's this, I think it's a little girl or a little boy, a kid. Let's go with a little girl. Could be either, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And so this little girl and her dad are together, and her dad gives her this ruby. And then the dad tells the daughter to go to firstly to this shop to see how much she could sell it for. So the idea is that she goes to different people to see what the ruby would be worth to different people. So,
Mm-hmm.
say the first person, just to give an example, could be like a baker, and she goes to the baker and says, "Oh, do you want this ruby?" And the baker says, "Oh, like that's a really pretty shiny rock. I'll give you $2 for it." And so
Yeah.
then the little girl goes back to the dad and says, "Oh, okay, like the baker says it's worth $2." And then it's definitely not a baker, but you get the point, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
she goes to the next person and says, "Oh, okay, do you want to buy this ruby?" And then that person says, "Oh, this is a really beautiful ruby. They're a jewelry maker, and okay, I could use this in my jewelry. I'll give you $200." And then the
Mm-hmm.
little girl goes back and says, "Oh, that person said the ruby's worth that much."
Mm-hmm.
And then finally she goes to an antiques dealer, and the antique dealer is like, "Oh, wow, this is like a really rare ruby. I'll give you $5,000 for it." And then she goes back and says, "Oh my God, Dad, like the antique dealer said
Mm-hmm.
it would be 5,000." And so the whole purpose of the story is that then what the little girl realizes is that the ruby, even though it's the same thing, has such different value in different environments.
Mm.
And so then the dad's like, "You shouldn't be placing your worth in the hands of others because it'll be different in different environments. The only person that can dictate your worth to be unchangeable is you."
Mm.
And I really love that kind of story because it's so true. Like, you can go to some environments where people put you on a pedestal depending on if they value what you do or who you are. And you can
Mm-hmm.
go to other environments where people don't know you, they don't know what you're about, they have different opinions to you,
Mm.
and they don't value you. So if you as an individual is going to be valued differently by different people, why would you place the value of yourself in the hands of others when
Mm.
you could just value yourself and have that be sustained throughout your whole life? Like, if you
Mm.
place your own value on yourself, then that's the value you have wherever you are.
Mm.
And it's so true. Like, I'm sure we've all experienced that at one point or another, where
Mm-hmm.
we're in different places where we feel so valued, and then others where we're not. And so at the end of the day, the only person that can maintain that value for ourselves is ourselves.
Do you like, I know the concept makes sense and is easy, but do you
Mm,
think it's that easy? Like, why do you think it is that I guess like a part of it is seeking that external validation that other people think that we're as cool as we think we are or as worthy as we think we are.
hmm
But what, like, I guess it's like, why can't it be enough that we've decided that we're enough? What, like, why do you think it is that we're always looking for that external validation? Or maybe, like, I don't know, maybe you don't look for that. I just know
Oh,
in my
I do. Yeah,
experience.
like I can tell, I can share that, and still at the same time, it's still something that is a challenge
Mm,
to not place your value in the hands of others, or not let your value be dictated by others. Honestly, I think it just comes back to the fact that we're social beings and that we still have that innate pull for connection and to
mm,
belong in a tribe.
hmm.
So
Yeah.
if we are accepted and validated by people, provides us that sense of safety and that sense of belonging, and that's so strong for us as humans. It's actually really interesting, the part of our brain that lights up when we experience physical pain. Well, when we experience social pain, the same part of the brain lights up.
Wow.
So if you feel excluded, or if you feel like you've been ostracized, say, like your
Mm.
example, that's actually activating the same part of the brain as physical
Oh.
pain. So that, yeah, I think that's why. I think it's because it's really painful to not be accepted by others. But I suppose the thing is that we used to maybe not have access to so many different tribes, like with
Mm-hmm.
our, cavemen and women brain, we didn't get in contact with so many people like we do now. Now we have access to literally thousands of people, if not millions, on our phones.
Yeah.
So I feel like the risk of not, like, you can risk not being liked because chances are you'll find another group of people anyway. Whereas
Mhm.
I suppose, like, the way that our brain developed was through a time where, oh no, if your tribe doesn't like you, you're fucked.
Yeah, you're
Like,
dead,
you're gonna
you're out.
die. Yeah, so I suppose it's about recognizing that there are so many communities now. There are so many
Mm.
different people, different groups of people. And if you are around a group of people that don't value you, there's going to be somewhere else where you are valued. And it's not to say only, you know, it's not to say that you have to completely look at your environment and go, okay, do they value me the way I think? Like, everyone has different opinions and things
Yeah.
like this. But I guess, yeah, just recognizing that at the end of the day, we also do want that belonging and that safety. So it's
Mm.
okay, little human, it's okay. You're allowed to want that.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful to like speak to. So thank you.
Thank you
Because
for
yeah,
asking the question.
our environment is so important, isn't it? And
Mm,
I think that's almost like the beauty as well that we sometimes forget because we're so hardwired to be like, I need to be included in the tribe, and if I'm not, I will die. But we do have access to so many different tribes. So we can actually be like, oh, wow, this environment isn't serving me. I do need to change it.
mm-hmm.
And at the same time, everywhere you go, you'll always be there. So sometimes you have to take a look at yourself and see if there's things that you need to maybe
Mm,
focus on. And sometimes it just is your environment. I've definitely had
yeah.
that
Yeah.
in the
Is that
past.
what you
But
experienced when you were here? Because you mentioned like those kind of more toxic environments with your work and with your home life as well,
mm,
which, by the way, that's really difficult because, well, basically where you live and where you work is where you spend all your time, like
yeah.
mostly anyway. So if those
Mm,
environments aren't feeling right for you, then that's no wonder you would be feeling low at that point.
yeah. It's so weird because when you're outside of the environment, you're like, why doesn't that person just leave? If it's not working, why don't they just go? And I mean, there's probably so much nuance and so many different layers. But it was like I knew that I was in these really shitty situations. Like my living one of the flatmates was leaving, so I was kind of waiting that out because I couldn't afford to move anywhere else. But like the working one, I was in such a state of stress that I was like crying every day before I went to work. And it was like, it was a really horrific time. And I like, I couldn't leave. I felt like one, I didn't have the resources to leave. Like I didn't have additional money for not having a job and those kinds of like basic security things, which still at the end of the day is just an excuse. But I was really trying to like look after the little me and my nervous system and like not just quit my job and try find something else, which is something I would normally do. But I don't know if it served me. Like I don't know which one would have served me better, to be honest.
Mm.
At that time. I was trying to do something different. I was trying to be a bit more mature. And anyway, I think sometimes as well, for any of our experiences, like we have to have that experience and we have to let ourselves go through it because that is really important to our own soul journey here. And so sometimes it can be really easy outside looking and being like, oh, she's so stupid. Why doesn't she just go? Or, in any kind of situation. But it's like, again, when you spoke about like the icebergs, it's like you don't know also what this person has come here to learn, what they're actually gaining from the situation. Like secondary gains are also huge, right? Just like there's so many different levels, and I do think it is quite hard to speak to. But I also would just love to offer the reminder that everything is a constant state of fluid change. We have really high highs and amazing things that happen and great days, and then we can have really bad days. And sometimes that will just be, a couple days in a week, and sometimes that will be like a whole year. Sometimes you just have to let yourself be in it and go through the journey. Sometimes you need to pull your head out of your ass and just actually do something else and like change your environment or do the work or whatever. I think there's always got to be a little bit of a space allowed for being human. And I must admit, anyone else in my situation who had come to me for support for something like that, and this is just me being so honest, like I will let someone complain about something for a few times, but if they're still complaining about it for a few months, I'm like, you're choosing that, and I don't have the space for you anymore to have that conversation with me. That's something that's like a really strong boundary of mine. And so I really struggled because I was like, I have been complaining about this for months now. So I'm choosing it, but I don't know how to choose different. And I think that was really, a bit eye-opening for me because that had been like a very strong boundary. I'm like, you're fucking choosing this thing that you've complained about for months. Like that's for you. I don't have the space. And then I had to like be this person choosing this reality for like months on end. I was like, oh my God. So I only kind of spoke to my mum about it because I was like, oh, well, at least she'll always be there to listen.
Love
Um,
mums. Shout out.
yeah, shout out to the mums. But yeah, I don't know, like there's so many things that I learned from my last year and it's been a lot.
Mm. Yeah, and I feel that sometimes when we go through those really low things, yes, it's hard to articulate it. It can be hard to articulate it. And it's just even having the courage to try and being like, I might not get this right, I think is a really phenomenal thing for other people because you might then articulate for someone exactly what they're going through. And then,
Mm,
like you said, they feel less alone. And also, it allows you to kind of probably like, even though you're good now, right? Like you've got your sparkle back, there might be parts of you that are still processing what happened potentially. Who
yeah,
knows?
yeah.
And like, even just talking through your journey and even
Mm,
like I feel like it helps you get clearer on yourself too. Like when you
yeah.
share your story with someone, it gets you more clear on, oh yeah, that is my story. Or like, oh yeah, that is why I do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, these are the people I want to help and it's for this reason. Like I am a strong believer in the idea that we often want to help the person that we used to be and that
Mm-hmm.
we're just like 10% kind of ahead of in terms of we've worked through that part. And it's nice to reconnect with when we were that person because ultimately a stronger connection to that means a stronger understanding to help someone who is there
Mm-hmm.
and help them go through that chapter because I really resonated with what you said in terms of having to just go through the motion sometimes. And that I saw this reel, I think yesterday, my sister sent it to me actually, and he was talking about how you can't skip chapters. And I was like, yes, thank you for that reminder. Like, you can't skip chapters if it's your life story book. There's
Mm.
no reading to the end and then being like, ooh, okay, I'm going to go to that chapter now. It's like, oh no, you have to go through this shitty bit first because you won't
Yeah.
get there otherwise. You won't learn the things you need to learn. You won't meet the people you need to meet for the
Yeah.
opportunities that come later, like all
Yeah.
these different things. And when you mention business as well, like I also can relate to that in terms of this podcast because it's been 1 year of me doing this. And
Congratulations, by the way. Like,
thank you.
I was driving to where I'm staying at the moment, a big drive, and I was like scrolling through old podcasts, and it was like your first episode was like saved in my
No,
episodes. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be on
that's
the
so
podcast after
cute.
a year.
Oh,
Yeah, so
and
good.
thank you. You've been like such a beautiful, supportive friend. Like this whole.
It was amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And well, yeah. I mean, like it's been a lot of fun, and it's also been a big chapter that I and that has made me realize, yeah, I can't just skip to the next one. And that's why it's so important to kind of, I guess, have a bit of drive or a bit of understanding of like, what's my purpose? Like, what am I actually here to do? Like you were sharing, you have reconnected with that and feeling your joy. And I agree. Like, I certainly feel that a big part of why we're here on this earth is literally just to experience what it's like to be a human. That's my own personal belief. Because, like,
Agreed.
well, that's what we're doing. We're
Yeah.
experiencing humanness, and that can look different for everyone. But yeah, I feel like you often get much more connected on a like deep level to what your purpose is from those really low lows
Yeah.
and those hard times. And it's nice to have hindsight, right? It's good to be here looking back. When
Yeah,
you're in it, it's
definitely.
like, nah, don't want to do this over this. And it's funny, like, yeah, the choosing yourself as well, like choosing that for yourself. It's something that I've definitely done too, where you kind of realize that you're complaining about something and it's okay. You're allowed to not feel good. You're allowed to not like what's happening in your life. And there is lots of privilege and unfair advantages and disadvantages as well. And also there are lots of choices too. And it's actually nice to realize you have those choices. Like you got to
Mm-hmm.
choose to go home
Yeah.
and you did change it for yourself, which is so incredible and so inspiring to see like you chasing what's meant for you.
Thank you, Georgie. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And is there anything else that you wanted to share from that whole experience that you feel called to?
One of the things that I struggled with was knowing that I'd been through like super low times before. Like I
Mm.
mentioned briefly, like wanted to take my life in my late teens, moved through that, had been through like another really rock bottom with being 26 and having gone to more funerals of my friends and family than my age. And then I got to this moment last year, this time, and I was like, I have been through so much shit and felt like I had done so much of the work. And it was almost like embarrassing to be all the way back. Not, I never feel like I'm back at the beginning, but to be going through such shit again. And I just feel like we often go through things repeatedly. Like all of those things probably have about 6 years between them. But we get to go through these experiences again because we get to have the experience from who we are in that moment because we have changed and the way we show up is different because it can be so frustrating to be like, I thought I'd done this. I thought I'd learned
Mm.
this. But there is magic in having those experiences from the growth that we've experienced and like having that trust in ourselves that we will be able to handle it or have the resources and tools around us to help us, whether that's just getting to a place of being absolutely okay with it or whether there is other work that we need to do or whatever the thing is. And I just think it can be really easy to get back to a place and be like, oh my fucking God, I thought I had done this. I thought I'd moved through this, but
Mm.
it doesn't have to be a shameful experience to feel like you're back in the same place because you never are. Maybe the situation feels the same, but you are a different person, and there's magic in that if you can allow yourself the grace to really witness that.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna use that for myself, I think. Like, I went through a really hard time, and of course, everyone's different perspective of hard
Yeah,
is vastly dependent on you as an individual. But
yeah,
for me, I went through what I would have considered a really rough time when I moved up here for the first year of living here. So over a year ago, I had a year of just like sucked. And during that time, like, you know, grief and sickness and losing my grandmother and losing a partner and so much change, just like so many things happening, I kind of am like, sometimes I remember that, oh yeah, I'm gonna lose someone again. Like actually that is part of life, is going through these really challenging times, and not just once.
Mm,
And I guess it gives you a little bit of perspective in thinking that the moments where everything is actually pretty good are pretty special. Like
mm-hmm,
sometimes I have to check myself when I'm complaining about my life right now and go,
mm,
hmm, what would Georgie from a year ago be thinking about where you are right now? Like
yeah.
she would be going, oh, you have no idea, like how good you have it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like, I don't know, this is strange, but I'm going to share it anyway, that rocked me in 2020 was when, I'm not sure if you know Kobe Bryant, the big
Mm,
basketball, like
yeah.
world famous basketball player. And when he died, I was really shocked because I was like, wow, death really does not have any, like, doesn't pick on anyone in particular. Like, no one
Mm,
is safe. Like, doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter your impact, doesn't matter you have a family or not. Like, no one is safe in terms
mm-hmm.
of like, it doesn't discriminate. Like, death
Yeah.
doesn't discriminate. And that's always had an impact on me because I just kind of thought that maybe it did. I don't know where that belief came
Yeah.
from, but yeah, like ever since then, when I think about it, sometimes I'm like, yeah, like these things don't discriminate against certain people, and like there's definitely certain groups of people that are predisposed to so much more
Mm-hmm.
turbulent and awful things, and that's another, I suppose, another topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really took perspective from that in the sense of the moments where you feel safe, when you feel even just content. You don't have to be ecstatic, but when you're content, like that's actually a pretty nice place to be.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to be having those high highs all the time. Like,
Mm.
I don't know how celebrities do it, where they go to like a new red carpet every event, because my nervous system would be fried. Like, when I had the Diary of a CEO event and met Stephen Bartlett a couple of weeks ago, I
Mm.
had the worst week after because coming off of that high was
Yeah.
so hard.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, huh, that's interesting. My favorite part of this whole experience, like, or not my favorite part, but when I felt the best wasn't when I was the most ecstatic and high. It was actually when
Mm.
I was just like content and in flow working on this event. And that
Yeah.
was like a really valuable, like, oh, okay. So if I'm chasing these highs constantly in my life, might not get out of that what I think that I would.
Mm. I just want to say on that note as well, this is completely changing the subject. Like, one, amazing. I love that you created that. I love that he came. Like, it's very inspiring. And I think I spoke to you just after, and you kind of mentioned like it was amazing and there is that kind of crash. But I also wanted to let you know that it was inspiring to me because when you work hard towards something like that, and whether it's having an event before someone you admire and then them coming, or whether it's holding scouts every week for your kids, like whatever your thing is, like there's so much joy that comes in working towards something that is fulfilling to you. And I was thinking about that when you said that, and I was like, I actually really enjoy when my life is in the pursuit of those things that do light me up in that way. This is maybe kind of going not against what you said, but could cause tension. But like, there is also so much, like we can have years pass by and we're content, but it reminded me that I really love to be out there doing the things. Like that is just a huge innate part of who I am. And it inspired me to like go after a couple things in my own life where I was like, I could just be chilling, but I want to be working towards something that is actually creating huge impact because that's what I'm here for. And I just wanted you to know that it was super inspiring to like watch you do that and to just be reminded of that feeling of what it does feel like to like have the means to chase goals.
Mm. I agree. I totally agree. Like the pursuit, I guess, I think that's the way dopamine even works. Like you get a dopamine release in the pursuit of the thing. And then once you
Mm,
actually have the thing, that like it's already happened, like you've already
yeah,
had that dopamine hit. So
yeah.
I think it actually makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I agree. Like the pursuit it is exciting because you're working towards something, and at the
Mm,
same time it's not happened yet, so it's not like
mm,
quite that high. Like I suppose that's sort of what I mean in terms of
yeah,
content. Like it's still
yeah,
exciting, that's for
yeah,
sure. It's just like when you get to it and then it's like the moment and then it's
yeah,
all over. It's like, oh, can we just go back to like 2 days ago when I was working on this? I just want to go
yeah.
back to the pursuit again.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a great lesson because doing more of the pursuit of what's meaningful for you is
Mm.
probably a pretty great way to live, I think.
I think so. Did I also see that you might be doing another meetup for someone else coming?
Perhaps. Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Would that
So
be?
so there's another podcaster, Chris Williamson,
Yeah.
and his podcast is Modern Wisdom. He put out a little ad and slash story social post campaign to say, hey, I'm coming to Australia. Where should I come to?
Oh, okay.
So I think he's going to be here, and I would love to do the same thing because it was just a lot of fun. And
Mm,
the people that came, like, it was a really diverse group of people. The common
mm,
denominator was the Diary CEO podcast. And
mm.
I feel like it would be a great opportunity to do the same thing again for Modern Wisdom.
Yay.
I mean, why
Yeah.
not? It was so
Why
fun.
not? Yeah,
If
I
he
love
comes to
it.
Brisbane, then absolutely, we'll do that because, yeah, I feel
Mm,
like especially as we start to be spending a lot of time, like we were talking a little bit about using AI and like
mm,
being online and working from home. And I think like it's just so important to keep nurturing those human connections. So thank you so much for this conversation. I've really enjoyed the twists and turns of it. I feel like we've like gone down a few different avenues that I've really enjoyed,
hmm
and also just like things that do take the conversation to talk about because I think a lot of the topics we've touched on to make an Instagram post on is pretty difficult. It's actually
Sorry.
like that conversation is quite needed, and that's again something I really enjoy about doing podcasting is you get to do that. So thank you. I'm really happy to hear that you've followed the right thing for you and you're enjoying the pursuit of what's meaningful for you as well, and even just to be able to catch up and talk about some things that I think would be a relatable topics for a lot of
hmm
people that will listen to this is so much fun and so joyful, hey? So joyful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm like, I just loved it. Love chatting with you, love connecting, and thank you for holding the space for me to go on like 1,000 tangents.
Oh, absolutely. I'll always do that. Thank you, Caitlin.